My name is Maya Hart. I'm 26, a software engineer who spent months quietly building something that could actually fix the broken freelance payment world. It wasn't flashy, but it was solid. An encrypted escrow system that tracked milestones, protected both sides, and made ghosting impossible. I built it alone at night, on weekends, on coffee and adrenaline. I told no one, just one person, my boss, Darren Blake. Darren was charming in a way that made you forget to double-check the lock. He talked fast, smiled big, and never stopped selling, even when no one was buying. He said he believed in me, that he wanted to help me pitch it right. We sat in his office late one Friday. I showed him the prototype, not the full repo, just the polished demo interface. He leaned back, grinned, and said, "This is brilliant, Maya. Let me handle the strategy. You focus on the code. We'll go in together, 50-50. I was cautious, but I also wanted to believe him, so I gave him limited access, just enough to demonstrate how the system worked. No real data, no backend, just the skin. 4 days later, I couldn't log into anything. My credentials were revoked, my access stripped. I thought it was a mistake until I checked the company calendar. There it was. Investor presentation, ledger pay. His name, my project, my work. He'd cut me out completely. But Darren didn't know what I'd built the demo with. Hidden inside the clean UI was a diagnostic thread, an autonomous watcher script that silently logged all unauthorized activity. If someone deployed the code without my credentials, it recorded every action. He copied the shell, but he didn't scrub the insides. And now the system was tracking him. Every move, every file pull, every change. Darren thought he stole my idea, but he'd unknowingly stepped into a trap I designed long before I ever trusted him. Darren called me into his office 2 days after the investor pitch. He was smiling like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't just stolen something that meant everything to me. The door closed behind me with that quiet click that always made me uneasy. He motioned for me to sit, but I stayed standing. "Maya," he began, "I've been thinking about how to best utilize your skill set." I blinked at him. Utilize. You're being reassigned. There's a new internal analytics initiative I want you to lead. My mouth went dry. What about ledger pay? Darren tilted his head, still grinning. That's been moved under a different team. It's growing fast. It needs more senior leadership. I stared at him. I could feel the heat crawling up my neck. You mean you? He spread his hands like it was obvious. Come on, Maya. You're a brilliant engineer, but scaling a product to market, that's not in your wheelhouse. I'm doing what's best for the project. For the company, I echoed, almost laughing. You mean your name on my work? Darren's grin flattened. Don't be dramatic. This is standard. You developed the prototype while employed here. It falls under work for hire. No, it doesn't, I said sharply. I wrote every line on my own time, on personal hardware. I have dated backups, commits, even an NDA draft you refused to sign. Nothing about this is yours. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms like he was suddenly very tired. You're young, Maya. You don't understand how business works. You need to stop thinking emotionally and start thinking like a professional. I stared at him, frozen. Every instinct screamed at me to flip the desk, to call a lawyer, to scream, but I didn't. I nodded once and left. He thought he'd won. What he didn't know was that the moment the platform went live, my platform, a fail-safe I embedded in the code, was triggered. I called it Watcher. It ran quietly in the background, invisible in plain sight. It checked for my encrypted authorization key every 12 hours. If it didn't find it, it logged everything, every transaction, every user ID, every code deployment. It didn't interfere with the system. It just watched and archived. Darren had copied the demo, thinking he'd gutted me out of my own build. But what he had was a half-functional interface tethered to something he couldn't see or control. Every time the platform ran under his name, it was writing a silent testimony, a digital paper trail that proved exactly who the thief was. He thought he had me buried. He didn't realize I'd planted the coffin with a live feed and a timer. The most dangerous thing you can steal is something you don't understand. Darren took my code, but he never read it line by line. He only saw the polish, the surface. He never saw the teeth. That day, I walked out of his office saying nothing, not because I had no fight in me, because I had already started it, and I knew he wouldn't see it coming. 2 days. That's all it took. The platform had barely gone live under Darren's stolen launch when the cracks started to show, quiet at first. A temporary freeze here, a delay in fund release there, but then accounts started locking mid-session. Clients couldn't access their dashboards. Freelancers reported disappearing balances. One of the investor accounts froze completely in the middle of a demo. The transaction never reached the recipient. Darren came to find me in a panic. "Maya, we've got a problem," he hissed, grabbing my arm in the hallway like we were co-conspirators. "Some accounts are glitching. One investor's access just shut down mid-transfer. Any idea what the hell's going on?" I blinked like I was confused. Weird. Maybe the deployment was rushed. Could be some data inconsistency from the test environment. You know how sensitive the payment logic is. He didn't even blink. He was sweating through his dress shirt. "You need to take a look, quietly. No one else gets pulled in." I nodded, keeping my face perfectly blank. "Sure, I'll check the logs." I walked to my desk, sat down, and opened my terminal on a different machine. Not the one the company provided. This one was mine. Isolated, clean, and patched into the diagnostic layer of Watcher. The hidden script he didn't know he'd been running since the day he demoed my stolen platform. The dashboard pulsed in real time, like a heartbeat. Each red spike marked an unauthorized execution, attempts to bypass escrow protocols, malformed API calls under false credentials, internal account merges using synthetic identities, things I'd deliberately planted as invisible mines. They weren't destructive, just loud enough to jam the system when triggered, just specific enough to look like sloppily written code, something only Darren could be blamed for. It was working. Watcher was tracking every unauthorized process, like a silent witness. The more he tried to push the platform forward, the more the chaos compounded, none of it traceable back to me. I'd wrapped every trigger in generic functions named just obscurely enough to look like boring legacy junk. Functions like getNode meta and verify chain A. Anyone digging would think it was inherited cruft, but I knew what they were. Landmines. Each crash brought more scrutiny, more attention from engineers, auditors, legal. People who'd never even looked at Darren twice before were suddenly asking questions. He thought I was just the forgotten engineer, a reassigned nobody, but I was still inside the machine, quiet, invisible, and watching. And the platform was breaking exactly the way I told it to. They didn't come with smiles or small talk. Two men in dark suits, no lanyards, no introductions, just a nod at reception and a request to speak to Darren. Their briefcases weren't props. They walked past the engineers without a glance and disappeared into Darren's office, which had walls made entirely of glass. You could see everything except for the sound. I watched from my desk as Darren stood up quickly, palms open like he was trying to explain something before they even sat down. One of them remained standing the entire time, arms crossed. The other laid out a folder, pointed to something, and spoke without emotion. Darren kept nodding. Too fast. Too often. They stayed in there for 47 minutes. I know because I counted every second. When they left, no one followed them out. No handshake, no smile, just silence. Darren didn't come out for the rest of the day. The blinds stayed shut for the first time since I'd started at the company. We all noticed. No one said anything, but I didn't waste the silence. That evening, after most of the office had cleared out, I opened the archived logs from Watcher. Every silent fault, every unauthorized access, every deployment tagged with Darren's credentials was time-stamped and indexed. It was clean, precise. There was no commentary or opinion, just facts. I compressed the file onto a secure flash drive. No digital trails, no email headers, no possible interception. The firm's compliance officer, Lydia Graff, worked late on Thursdays. She was sharp, always calm and allergic to unnecessary conversation. Perfect. I walked down 2 floors and knocked once on her door. She glanced up from her laptop. "Yes? I believe this belongs in your hands," I said, placing the flash drive on her desk. She didn't touch it, just looked at me. "Do I need to know who you are?" "Number, but when you see the name in those logs, you'll know why it came to you." She looked at the drive again, then back at me. "This has been verified. It's raw, untouched." Lydia nodded once. That was all. I turned and left without another word. As I stepped into the elevator, I could see Darren's office from above. Still sealed, still dark. He didn't know what was coming. But now the people who mattered were starting to see what he really was. The quiet visitors weren't the end of his trouble. They were just the beginning. They scheduled the meeting without warning. No subject line, no explanation, just a time, and a room number. I knew better than to ask questions. When the calendar invite came from the compliance office, you showed up. The room was plain. No windows, just a rectangular table, 2 chairs, and a carafe of water neither of us touched. Across from me sat Claire Mason, head of security and internal systems review. She was older than most in our office, with silver-streaked hair and a quiet, unshakable focus that made every word she said feel like evidence being recorded. She didn't greet me, didn't offer a smile. "Maya," she said, folding her hands neatly in front of her. "We've been reviewing the platform codebase. An external audit firm was brought in last night." I nodded, saying nothing. They flagged some inconsistencies, namely, a mismatch between the ownership tags in version history and what's currently deployed to production. Still, I stayed quiet. She didn't need me to speak yet. "We've located a deleted dev branch, recovered most of it. Name on that branch? Maya Hart, not Darren Blake." Her voice didn't change tone, not even slightly. "I'm not here to accuse," she continued. "I'm here to understand. I'd like you to walk me through the structure, what you built, how it was originally staged, and what changes you've observed." I looked at her for a moment, trying to read her expression, but Claire Mason was unreadable, so I opened my laptop and began. I showed her the architecture from my earliest commits, the escrow engine logic, the milestone trigger automation, the sandbox environment I'd constructed line by line on my own hardware. I pulled up timestamps from 6 months ago, showing code pushes made outside of work hours, 2:13 a.m., 4:27 a.m., Saturday nights, Sunday afternoons. Then I showed her the moment Darren cloned the branch, the edits he made, the lines where he stripped my metadata and reassigned ownership under a fake generic user ID. No code changes, no improvements, just theft. Claire didn't say a word the entire time. When I was done, I closed the screen and met her eyes. She stared at me a moment longer, unreadable as ever. Then she nodded. That's all I needed. I stood. She didn't shake my hand. She didn't thank me. As I walked out of the room, I felt the shift. Not dramatic, not loud, but absolute. This wasn't about suspicion anymore. They knew. And the truth, buried, deleted, whitewashed, had just resurfaced with receipts no one could ignore. By the end of that week, something shifted. The board of directors, usually invisible, unreachable, suddenly wasn't. Darren stopped strutting through the office. His calendar emptied. His assistant looked pale, lips tight, eyes darting every time someone approached. Then came the internal memo. Short, clinical. Darren Blake's executive access had been temporarily suspended, pending an internal review. No reason given, but everyone in the engineering department knew. Whispers spread faster than coffee. They called me in the next day. Private meeting, legal floor, 2 levels above where I usually lived. No title on the door, just a room with a single glass table and 5 folders already waiting. Inside sat 3 people, the firm's general counsel, the board liaison, and a woman I hadn't seen before, head of legal operations, introduced only as Meredith. She slid a thick envelope toward me. "These are the documents Darren submitted as part of his ownership claim. I want you to review them." I did, slowly, carefully. My hands didn't shake, but I could feel my heartbeat in my teeth. They were close copies, painfully close, but not perfect. Darren had forged my NDA signature, mismatched a date from a scanned doc, and even included a fake development timeline. I let the silence hang before pulling out my own folder. I laid out my original pitch deck, dated 6 months before Darren's supposed initial concept. I handed over my backup emails, printed screenshots of repo timestamps, signed hardware usage logs, and, most damning of all, the unsigned NDA that Darren refused to return. Meredith compared the forged NDA to my copy side by side. Her eyes narrowed. "This," she said, holding up Darren's version, "is perjury." She didn't look at me when she said it. She was already making notes. The room stayed silent for a long time. Then the board liaison cleared his throat and asked, "Do you want this escalated through civil channels, or should we proceed internally?" I met his eyes. "Whatever ensures he never does this to anyone else." He nodded. As I left the room, I didn't feel relief. Not yet. Just momentum. The kind you get when a wheel finally catches after grinding in place too long. The board was awake now, and Darren had just run out of doors to close. Darren didn't go quietly. He fought like a man drowning. Within 24 hours of the board suspending his access, he began lashing out from behind closed doors. Emergency meetings, back-channel calls, private sit-downs with anyone who would still listen to him. The story changed with every retelling. First, it was a misunderstanding. Then, A joint collaboration gone sour. Finally, he landed on what he must have thought was a masterstroke. He accused me of sabotage. He claimed I had planted bugs in the system after being reassigned, that I'd intentionally corrupted the launch out of spite, that he'd tried to help me, and I'd turned on him. The desperation in his version was obvious, but desperation has a way of making noise, and noise buys time. For a day or two, things stalled. Then the firm's technical investigators released their findings. The logs showed everything. Every unauthorized access tagged with Darren's user credentials. Every code deployment traced to his machine's MAC address. Every edit, every deletion, every attempt to scrub metadata, catalogued in immutable version histories. And then there was Watcher, my diagnostic script, which had quietly chronicled every action since the first unauthorized clone. Timestamped, verified, untouched. There was no room for doubt, and no room left for Darren to maneuver. The next morning, I was called back upstairs. Same room, different energy. This time, it was just me, Meredith from legal, and the board liaison. No small talk. Meredith slid a new file across the table. Inside was a release agreement. "You have two choices," she said. "You can file civil charges, open suit, media attention, courtroom strategy, or we handle it internally." I didn't speak, so she continued. "If you agree, Darren will be removed, quietly. Your name will be restored to all ownership and IP filings. You'll retain full control of the platform and its roadmap, with legal protections this time. No grey areas, no handshakes. We'll make it official." I stared at the document. It was everything Darren had tried to steal from me, rewritten to make things right. "Will he walk away clean?" I asked. "No," Meredith said. "His career's done. We'll make sure of that." I signed. No courtroom speeches, no media circus. Just closure. Signed, dated, sealed. That afternoon, Darren cleared out his office under escort. No words, no eye contact. His nameplate was gone by evening. I didn't feel like I'd won. It wasn't that kind of victory. It was something colder, sharper, not justice, just balance restored. It happened in the dim, concrete silence of the parking garage, 2 days before Darren was officially removed. I just clocked out late, walking to my car, when I heard hurried footsteps behind me. I turned, and there he was, Darren Blake. His tie was loose, his face drawn and hollow, like someone who hadn't slept in days. His usual bravado was gone. No suit of arrogance to shield him now, just a man unraveling. "Maya," he said, his voice low and fast, like he didn't want anyone else to hear. "Wait, just give me a second." I didn't speak. I didn't move. "I didn't mean for it to go this way," he said, stepping closer, palms open. "You have to believe that. I didn't want to cut you out. It just got out of control." He rubbed the back of his neck like he was in pain. "At first I thought I'd bring you in later, after the deal closed. But the money changed things, the way they looked at me. They wanted a clean pitch. One name, one face. I got scared. Scared. That word stuck in the air between us. He kept talking, like he was hoping confession might count as redemption. "You're brilliant, Maya. Smarter than anyone in that building. I knew you'd never let it slide if I told you what I'd done. So I didn't. And then it was too late." I still said nothing. He was sweating despite the cold air. If I could go back, I would have done it differently. I just thought I had to take the shot while it was there. I looked at him for a long time. I wanted to feel something. Anger, pity, even closure. But I didn't. Because Darren didn't know the most important part. He thought the fallout was over, that I'd already sprung every trap I laid. But one thread was still running. One last safeguard. Watcher hadn't just tracked activity. It had installed a fingerprint, an invisible watermark inside the build that checked for replication. If he ever tried to launch a clone of the platform anywhere else, the system would lock him out within seconds, corrupt core files, and leave a traceable signature tied directly to him. I didn't say a word. I didn't have to. Darren stood there waiting for forgiveness, but I just got in my car, closed the door, and drove away. He just couldn't let go. A month after his removal, Darren disappeared from every professional circle. His name vanished from the firm's internal systems, his credentials scrubbed, his office turned into storage. I figured that was the end of it. I was wrong. One night I got a ping on my private diagnostics monitor, something I hadn't seen in weeks. It was faint, but it was unmistakable. A clone of the LedgerPay backend had been activated, somewhere offshore, through masked IPs and a paper-thin LLC registered under a generic name. A ghost company, clearly just a front. Darren. He'd pulled an old copy of the codebase, one of the stripped-down builds he must have downloaded before I locked him out, and he tried to relaunch it. A new logo, new domain, same stolen bones. What he didn't know, or maybe forgot in his desperation, was that Watcher wasn't just a log system. It had layers. There was a second protocol buried beneath everything, a dormant failsafe that didn't activate during usage or testing. It was a fingerprint scanner, a signature validator, and when it detected a familiar sequence of code being deployed under new credentials without my encryption key, it triggered, quietly, instantly. Watcher broadcasted a beacon, an embedded signature unique to that version, across every node and every partner server it had ever touched. A silent red flag. Within minutes, the system flagged the clone. Transactions froze, modules corrupted, security protocols overloaded, and then came the cease notification, sent directly from the host infrastructure provider, citing digital ownership conflicts and violation of proprietary code protections. I hadn't touched a thing. I didn't send an email, didn't place a call, didn't lift a single finger. The code protected itself. I watched from my laptop as the clone servers went dark, one by one, like lights switching off in a building no one was meant to enter. Darren's last move had collapsed before it could even walk. He tried to build something from theft, from pieces of something he didn't understand and never respected. But code isn't just syntax. It remembers who wrote it, and mine never forgot. That night, I closed my terminal, powered down the monitor, and leaned back in my chair. It was over. Truly over this time. Darren had played his final card, and I hadn't even needed to counter. The code had already written the ending for him. I started from scratch. New name, new firm, new city, no baggage, no noise. Just a clean slate and the platform that started it all. Only this time, it was fully mine. LedgerLock was reborn under a different name, redesigned from the ground up, using the parts that mattered. The core logic, the escrow integrity, the seamless backend, that stayed. Everything else I reimagined. I hired a team I trusted, every person vetted, every contract airtight, no handshakes, no vague promises, just structure, discipline, clarity. I built firewalls around every layer of the system, both in code and in policy. I didn't give out root access, not even to my co-founder. If something broke, it came through me. We launched small, carefully, no flashy pitches or wild promises, just quiet results. The platform worked, clients stayed, word spread. It grew the way it was supposed to, with real users and real needs. As for Darren, nothing. No lawsuits, no countersuits, no articles or denials or official statements. He just vanished, like a glitch patched out in the latest version. Some said he moved to another city. Others heard he was working under a different name. I never checked. I never cared. I don't need revenge. I don't need validation. I have something far better. Ownership, not just of the code, but of the journey, the mistakes, the lessons. Every line, every choice, every scar that built this thing the right way. And this time, it's untouchable, because it has my name. Do you think Maya was right to let Darren walk away without pressing charges? Or should she have made sure he faced public consequences? I'd love to know what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story and want more like it, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss the next one.